Within the PCF 2.0 ecosystem, there's a single entry point for operational teams, and that is Pivotal Ops Manager. Because there's only a single entry point, we can ensure that our entire ecosystem and platform is secure. We secure that single entry point, and therefore we have a secure operational platform. Also, because we have a single entry point, we have a single pane of glass that we can use to scale out our entire platform. That includes applications, services, containers, etc. So today what we're going to do is we're going to cover how to deploy Pivotal Ops Manager. To start, we're going to focus in on how to do it on vSphere. So let's first go out to the Pivotal network, network.pivotal.io. This is the Pivotal Marketplace. Once inside the Pivotal Marketplace, you'll see a bunch of Pivotal services as well as partnered services. And what we're going to focus in on is Ops Manager. So we'll click on that icon here. And once in here, we'll select the latest release and we will download the one for vSphere. Make sure that you download the correct one for your cloud. In this case, we'll be using vSphere. Once downloaded, you'll have an OVA. So with that OVA, we'll go ahead and launch our VMware vSphere web client and we will deploy the OVA. So we'll go ahead, right click on our vSphere and say deploy OVF template. We'll go ahead and click browse. And then go ahead and find our OVA. We'll hit next. And you can rename the OVA if you would like and select a data center or folder where you'd like to store it. Once we've selected a data center, we'll go ahead and select a cluster to run that on. We could also select a resource pool here if we wanted, but in this case I'll just choose a cluster. Once the OVA is validated, essentially making sure that all the metadata inside the OVA is valid and you've had a good download, you'll see here review. And then we'll actually select the storage that we're going to use for now this is just for the Ops Manager VM. So we'll go ahead and select on our data store, and then we'll select a network. And finally, this is where most of the heavy lifting is we'll go ahead and fill in the customized template. So these are going to be parameters that are used to deploy our Ops Manager VM. And so Ops Manager VM always has the username Ubuntu. When you try to SSH into the Ops Manager, the username is always Ubuntu. And so we need to add a password. Then we'll go ahead and create a custom host name if we want. This is not required. If you don't set it, then it will just be pivotal-ops-manager. We have to ensure that our IP address that we end up giving this VM points to that host name. So in this case, I already have a host name set up. We have a DNS server. So this is my DNS. Also, we have a default gateway for our IP address that we're going to assign to the Ops Manager VM. Speaking of that IP address, we'll go ahead and set that. So this will be the IP address that points to our DNS record and where we'll actually access the VM. We'll also go ahead and add an NTP server. And finally, a net mask. Once we have all that, then we're all set. Ensure that you have the right properties set here. And finally hit finish. This will then go ahead and deploy our OVA. Once the OVA is deployed, we'll go ahead and right click and power on. So once we've powered on our Pivotal Ops Manager VM, we can actually navigate out to our host name that we specified earlier. We can click Advanced, Proceed. And once we get inside of here, we'll notice that we're being welcomed into Pivotal Ops Manager. Now here we can select whether we're importing an existing Ops Manager. In that case, we'll be upgrading an old Ops Manager to a new one, or creating a brand new Pivotal Ops Manager for our Pivotal PCF 2.0 ecosystem. And in that case, we have to select an identity provider or use something that's internal, such as LDAP or SAML. And so in this case, I'm going to just use internal authentication. So what you'll notice here on the first page is that we're being welcomed into Pivotal Ops Manager. Here we have three options. Our first two are in the case of deploying Ops Manager as a brand new deployment. And the last one down here at the bottom is actually when we use to deploy a new ops manager from an old one. So in the case of upgrading. Now in the first two, we can either use an external identity provider, such as a SAML provider, Okta, or LDAP, or we can actually just use an internal authentication, which we call UAA, or Pivotal UAA. So in this case, we're going to use an internal authentication method. What internal authentication is going to do for us is it's going to allow us to store users in an encrypted database. So here we're going to have the admin user and then any password that you'd like to use for actually accessing Ops Manager, and then the decryption passphrase for that database that we are storing users in. Now, since Pivotal Ops Manager reaches out to the marketplace to grab automatic updates, we actually have to set a proxy. If your organization uses an HTTP proxy or HTTPS proxy, then you need to set the values here. In this case, I have no proxy, so I'll accept the user agreements, and then I'll hit setup. And here you'll notice that Pivotal is actually starting that full authentication system for us. Once the authentication service is up, we can now log in with our username and password we just set. And what you'll now notice is that we have PCF Ops Manager all deployed.